Hello, I am Brennan Storr, host of the Ghost Story Guys podcast.
And I am Joseph Comeau, host of In Search of Ghosts.
And this is Weird Together, where we talk about the latest and greatest in, well, at this point, really just horror movies, because we're weird and you're weird. So why not be weird together?
Yes, we are. So, yeah, what's going on, Brennan? How you doing?
I am good. I'm sitting here. I've been looking forward to this since we're going to be talking about youth culture and other things I don't at all understand. I went to the import shop and I bought whatever this is.
Okay.
That kind of looks vaguely like a penis. I don't think it is. We'll find out in a moment. I believe it is some kind of grape soda. So we shall see. How about you, Joseph? How are you?
I am drinking another local microbrew product from here in Georgia. It's called Blind Pirate. It is a blood orange IPA by Monday Night Brewing. And it's
all right.
I'm not an IPA person, but it's pretty okay.
No, IPAs are generally gross. That's
yeah.
All right. So before we get to the movie, let's try this here.
And I'm gonna pop up.
That's horrible.
Is it horrible? Okay. So is it worse than an IPA?
Yeah, it really is.
So oddly enough, I'm the winner tonight with an IPA.
Congratulations.
Okay. Yeah. So we got a couple folks in the chat. So let's say hey to it. We got Tony. Finally made it. Now we wait. They were here like at 8:30. So appreciate you being here. We got Rebecca who's back with us again. Thank you for being here, Rebecca.
Hey, Rebecca.
And we got Rin here.
Rin. Fantastic.
Who I believe was with us last time.
She was indeed. Yeah, absolutely.
So we got some folks back for this. So we got some folks in the chat, and I'm sure we'll get a few more in there. So, yeah.
All right. Well, if the folks are going to chat, obviously we got to tell them what we're going to chat about. We are talking about the brand new horror film. We're all going to the World's Fair, and instead of summarizing it, well, let's just let the film speak for itself. We're All Going to the World's Fair is a 2022 horror film, I guess. Let me put it this way. If you have an ounce of empathy in your soul, then this movie will scare the shit out of you, but not in the way you might expect. The film is directed by Jane Schoenbrunn and stars newcomer Anna Cobb as Casey, a teenage girl who made me realize I do have a handful of paternal instincts floating around in my diseased brain, because throughout the entire film I found myself wanting to take her somewhere safe and find her a good therapist. Casey has the great misfortune of living in that liminal period between the creation of the internet, which allows a lonely teenager to reach out to the world beyond the scope of parental supervision in order to express themselves, and that far-off moment in the future when we figure out that we shouldn't be letting them do that because there are fucking weirdos out there who prey on them, or who are lonely enough to need them, which is almost as bad. And I mean really figure that out, not using, won't someone think of the children, as an excuse to shut down whole parts of the fucking internet in a bid to hurt, legitimate adult sex workers who have the agency to make their own decisions. You alright? Am I ever?
Good point. Continue.
As the film opens, Casey, who lives alone in a house her always working father sometimes occupies with his shouting, takes the World's Fair challenge, which is a little like the whole Slender Man thing before it escalated. We then follow Casey as she waits to see if the vaguely defined metamorphosis other YouTubers have described starts to transform her life. Will Casey morph into a whatever the fuck? Is that middle-aged bald weirdo who sends her chilling reply videos a predator or some other lonely soul looking for connection? Was I deeply haunted by the sprawling suburban emptiness in which Casey must live her life? And did I have a moment of existential dread as I realized that this is the norm for countless North American teenagers who have been forced by late-stage capitalism to raise themselves? Someone give me a hug, please. Then watch We're All Going to the World's Fair to find out. Oof. There's a lot going on in this one, J-Dog.
There is. So, I guess we need to unpack it, starting with some baggage.
Yes, sir. All right. So, of course, every movie you watch, you go into it with baggage, things that your presuppositions, ideas, grudges against filmmakers, anything. And this is where we talk about the kind of baggage we went into this film with. So, Joseph, I'm going to let you start. What kind of baggage did you go into We're All Going to the World's Fair with?
So, you had kind of mentioned to me in preparation for this that there's some themes that might, hit me as a parent. I have two children. They're not as old as the character Casey. And that did hit, close to home a little bit. There were definitely some of those themes, indeed fell in that area and, touches on some of the concerns that I have as a parent in terms of, my children are at an age where they're starting to check out YouTube and things like this, and they're wanting to look up Slender Man and things like that, and you just wonder what they're going to find and get into as a parent. So it hit on that. And then, based on the film's title, it seemed like we were in for something different. It just, it's a unique title, interesting title. But it still wasn't what I expected. And even though I didn't know exactly what I expected. So the title and the idea going into it, I thought it might be a little bit different than it was. And it might have kind of been a little bit of misdirection there.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough. I didn't go in with much baggage on this one. I was not familiar with the director's previous work, although I believe this was their first feature. They have a couple documentaries under their belt. There's a self-induced hallucination, which I actually tried to watch prior to the stream, but I couldn't find it anywhere online. They took it down. It was on Vimeo. You could rent it. The director took it down. So hopefully at some point that'll be available somewhere, because I would like to see that. It was a short documentary about internet culture. Particularly creepypasta culture, like Slender Man. And I mean, you can obviously see how that all kind of feeds into this. And when I kind of realized where it was going, I was a little bit concerned, or sorry, I should say, going in, knowing that about, the creepypasta culture, I was a little bit concerned it would be kind of exploitative on the level of like the Slender Man movie, which, if you haven't seen, was directed by Sylvain White, came out in 2018. It's terrible. I like Sylvain White's movies generally, and it looks good, but it's a bad movie. I think it was the result of a lot of interference. I just don't think it needed to be made at the time it was made, given everything that happened. But regardless, so and since seeing the film and listening to some interviews with Jay and Schonbrun, they've been very clear about, this is not meant to be sort of aping any particular internet phenomenon. This is meant to be an examination of all these mindsets, and we'll get into our opinions on the film here in a sec, but I think they succeeded. So that's sort of my take on the baggage. That's kind of what I was going in with.
Makes
and
sense.
Now,
I was gonna say real quick, Jonathan says, hey, we got Jonathan just jumped in here.
Hey dude.
And Rin has told you don't have to drink. You don't have to finish that drink.
Rin, I paid good American money for this dusty, shitty soda, and by God, I'm going to drink it.
And Tony's ready to go. So here we go.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I know we had very different experiences with this movie. There's only one place we can settle this, Joseph.
Yes, indeed.
The Toctagon.
Welcome to the Toctagon. 2 men enter, 2 men leave.
All right, I'm limbering up here. I'm gonna discuss the shit out of this movie with you.
All right.
All right. So you go first. What was your first point?
Okay, I'm going to go with something just kind of, I think, pretty straightforward, but that kind of struck me. The opening scene, I really, it was long and drawn out, but I really liked it because I felt like the pacing and the acting really felt believable in terms of like a take on how a child this age, a teenager this age, in the era of the internet, alone in a room, would approach doing something like this. It was very nonchalant, snacking, getting her stuffed animal prepped, just maybe doing I think she did a practice run of the line and just looking at the screen and move. It felt natural, believable, and what you would expect something like this, how it would go down. And I give a lot of credit to the directing and the acting for that.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, that sort of ties into my first point, which is that I really loved the lighting and the camera work because it was all very naturalistic, but very effective. And I was watching an interview with the director, and the interviewer actually, I was a little bit stunned by this because they're clearly someone who's seen movies. They asked them if the director had done all the shooting themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, no, you fucking idiot. Like, obviously not. They had a DP on this, quite a talented DP, I might add.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Schonbrun, to their credit, just kind of took it in stride. But I think it's one of those things, right, where if something like this is done well, it feels simple. And that's very much a strength of the film. As I say, they talk about, there's a thing we're going to talk about in a little bit. They literally spent all night working on it. And to watch it, you think, oh, well, they just did the thing. But no, they spent all night, building this one particular shot. So yeah, I agree. I think the whole thing felt very naturalistic. And I think without that, it wouldn't have worked. I think if they had tried to make it more Hollywood, make it more accessible, I think that would have made for a less engaging film. And I think there's really only two actors on screen. It's is it Michael Rogers? Is that his name?
I think so. Yeah, I'll look that up while you're commenting.
The only other film I've seen him in is Beyond the Black Rainbow, which was a Panos Cosmatos film which was the film he made prior to Mandy. And he was good in that too. But again, I think having a newcomer in Anna Cobb and someone who you don't see very often allowed you to sort of see this as something that's happening, as opposed to just, again, sort of Hollywood unfolding.
Yeah, and it is Michael Rogers, and the more accomplished of the two actors, as it was, her debut, right?
Yeah, and I believe, if I recall, Sean Brun said she saw a number of tapes, like audition tapes, and I believe it was Anna Cobb, and she seems like a cute kid. She a couple interviews I saw, she's very very polite, very very kind. I'm terrified to see what being a film actor does to her, but well, hopefully she has better parents looking out for her than Casey does.
Here's hoping.
One other thing I wanted to say about on the technical level, there was one shot that Sean Brun said they shot themselves, and that was the New Year's Eve scene, which I don't think I have clipped, but that apparently they felt like their poor DP had already been put through enough and wasn't being paid enough, so they drove to upstate New York on New Year's Eve to get those shots themselves. But yeah, apart from that, it was all it was not as natural as it looked. Again, which is, if you're doing it right, that's how it looks.
Right. Yeah. I wondered about that scene. It seemed like with the budget and the way they approached everything else, that was probably filmed during New Year's Eve at an actual, gathering at a small community. It did not seem like something they set up. Yeah,
that's it. So for me, the next thing I thought I would bring up, since we're talking about the technical stuff, is I mentioned there was a shot that they worked on all night, as I understand it, according to the interviews I watched. And that is the one shot. And I didn't actually even recognize that it was a single take shot until Sean Brun said it in an interview. And I went back when I rewatched the movie, which I've learned, Joseph, I'm buying these on iTunes now.
Okay.
Because I have to watch them at least once and probably twice. So there's no sense renting it twice.
Right.
But yeah, and it's literally a shot that starts with Casey closing her laptop. Excuse me. And then it follows her as she leaves the house and crosses the yard in the night into the barn. She takes out her father's gun. She looks at it and eventually turns on an ASMR video to try and fall asleep, which was fucking haunting. And we'll talk about that later as well. But it's very effective. And again, it was so natural that I didn't think about it. But shots like that are really hard to pull off. You have to do a lot of prep. And Sean Brun didn't say how many takes they'd done, but I assume it probably wasn't many. And, usually when you watch movies that have like the one shot, it's very flashy. It's almost meant to call attention to itself. Like anyone who's seen the lesser Brian De Palma film Snake Eyes will remember the 12-minute long tracking scene with Nicolas Cage walking through a crowded boxing arena. And the whole sequence is like 20 minutes long, but they hide a bunch of cuts and some swish pans. But there's one unbroken 12-minute cut. And again, the whole point is to be like, hey, look at what I'm doing, you idiots.
Well, it reminds me of there's an extended scene in the old school movie Swingers, that kitchen scene, right? Where they're going into the club. They're kind of going through the back door into a club, going through a kitchen, and it's this long scene through a real site. It's it's on site at some club in LA, and it's one of those long scenes that as a viewer, unless you understand how much has to go into that, you'll miss it. It just seems like a shot in a movie. But when you realize they went through these different hallways and corridors and a kitchen and outside and then into a club, all with different lightings, and they had to make it all work seamlessly, and all the prep that has to go into that. It's really, it's an impressive kind of display of virtuoso, film work.
Yeah.
And showing off because you can in some ways.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, Snake Eyes had a 12-week shoot. So I guarantee you that they had more prep time on that single oneer than Sean Brennan had for the entirety of the shoot for We're All Going to the World's Fair. So I just wanted to call that out because it's really brilliant work. And I think in a film this small, I don't necessarily know that it would get the attention that it deserves. Because again, it's the best kind of one take, which is that it doesn't call attention to itself, but it really establishes you in that place and in that time. And then in my case, made me real fucking sad, as we'll talk about. So,
well, I'm gonna hit on a point that kind of juxtaposes against that, because whereas that was this really nicely understated demonstration of filmmaking talent, there were some scenes that I thought were in the opposite direction. So you get this scene where dude is pulling admit one tickets out of the festering whatever the hell that is in his arm. Okay. And then there's a
We've all been there.
Yeah, right. There's a retro 8-bit game. And then there's this person with demon wings.
Sure.
Whatever. And then
pretty sure I dated her at one point.
Probably. And then, I don't have a shot of it, but then, the guy who gets pulled into the screen, it felt like something out of a Freddy Krueger movie. And it was like, what the actual fuck is going on with all this stuff? But on a serious note, like, it felt like these forays into actual horror type scenes with it felt, I have to imagine most of their budget went to some of those special effects, or at least a lot of it. I don't know. But like, I felt like those took away from the film. Casey's transformation was much more subtle, and it almost seemed boring and mundane in contrast with these transformations they were showing snippets of that were highly, edited and all kinds of, practical and computer generated effects, I'm guessing. And it feels like if those scenes weren't there, I feel like the scene where that one scene of the video where she's in bed and then there's that creepy look on her face.
Yes, I was going to clip that, and I wish I hadn't.
Yeah, I wish I. Yeah, but that would have stood out more as the creepiest point in the film. But it's almost like you saw these other kinds of forays into special effects, creepy horror tropes, and we're waiting for that to happen with Casey's, and it felt like it caused, at least for me as a viewer, to miss out on what could have been potentially really understated. And it was understated, but unfortunately, you had this. It contrasted against these other scenes where you're like, well, where is her really crazy over the top transformation? So I felt like it took away from that.
Interesting. I mean, Rebecca says sometimes less is more, especially if we don't have a huge budget. Absolutely. I'd like Mike Flanagan's Absentia. Very, very simple film, very cheap. Anyway, not cheap. Yeah. I'm sorry, distracted. I think part of the reason they constructed it that way is again, I sort of understood the film after listening to some chatter about it, is that, none of the transformations are real. These are all people taking part in sort of like make-believe, basically. They're all kind of, and because this is, I think, where I kind of reach my like grape soda moment, because I don't experience YouTube this way. I don't experience the internet this way.
Yeah.
Like to me, if I see a YouTube video, and I guess in this way, I'm a little bit like the bald creep.
Only in this way?
Yeah, well, all right, fair. That's only because my parole officer.
That's true.
But if I see a video of someone saying like, I'm going to go commit violent acts, I think they're serious. I would assume they're serious, that they're playing a role, like that they're role playing with their real name and their real house, and it wouldn't even occur to me. And I think that's something that, again, because I don't have that familiarity with internet culture. Like I'm peripherally aware of Marble Hornets and Slender Man and the bunch of that crap, but I don't understand necessarily how it works. And I think a lot of people don't. So I think when you see, the tickets and shit like that, you're seeing that, yeah, some people really commit to this, and they, like, again, Marble Hornets, the Marble Hornets Slenderman videos. A lot of people thought those were real. They thought this was a documentary, and they were just really well put together bullshit clips. But as we kind of blur the lines between what's real and what's not, I think it gets harder for to tell those apart. And I think in a way, like, because Casey is so new at this and so like unadorned, and she's just kind of pretending as hard as she can. You're only seeing as much as she can do. Like for her, the biggest transformation, because obviously no real transformation is happening. Mm-hmm. Like the only thing that's happening for her is she's growing up and becoming a different person, and that happens. And she's growing up in a world where she doesn't really have anyone. I mean, Jesus Christ, like I said, she had to fall asleep to a fucking ASMR video. That was depressing.
Yeah. And
I think that, you're kind of seeing this is her tearing her Poe apart, her stuffed animal. Like that was sort of the closest she ever came to a transformation. And again, that's just her. She's trying to be part of the game. She's trying to be part of what other people are doing, but she lacks the ability. So I think that's why you had that disconnect there, because they're all role playing, but they're role playing, like when I see people making costumes and shit on YouTube, and I think, Jesus fucking Christ, I couldn't do that. I'd be tearing apart my stuffed animals too, because that's all I got.
Well, so I didn't get a screenshot of it, but there was a scene where there was a young man who looked like he got pulled into his computer by arms. Now, I know with After Effects and some of the computer software that's accessible today to any old schlub like you and I, if someone has a little more talent than I do, they can do that. But the time that this is shot in, I don't know if that was as widely accessible, in terms of the position. So I guess where I'm asking is, was that supposed to be that this kid literally had, edited a video that looked like he got pulled into a computer, or was the film suggesting that actually happened?
Nope. No, okay. It's completely, you're seeing a range of how people would respond in those situations, and like to their varying degrees of capability. Okay. So you've got lady who looked like she was stung by bees. Mm-hmm. She can make demon wings, so she's got demon wings. And you've got ticket guy. Maybe he's trying to become an effects artist, or he likes doing effects, so he kind of did his own like gnarly home effect. And computer nerd was able to magic himself into the box.
Interesting. Okay. And that wasn't, and maybe it just flew over my head, but I think there was enough confusion in this film and it's maybe I think some limitations with the narrative that wasn't clear to me. And you've listened to some interviews. So for me, it felt like, well, wait, is this some actual horror stuff that's going on, and what's next for Casey? So that clears it up a little bit. But at the same time, if you have to have that explained to you that much, and we're smart guys, we're not, I mean, relatively smart. And
you might even say one of us has a PhD.
Yes, I'm going to set you up each time to make me regret.
Thank
that.
You. Yes, I need something, Joseph. This world is cold and cruel. I have to fall asleep in my garage to ASMR videos, so I need this to keep my soul warm.
Fair enough. So I'm good with that. So if you have to explain it that much, it's either navel gazing or maybe you should have it a little more clear. I don't know.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think Tron Legacy. The less we say about Tron Legacy, the better, dude. Oh man, Clue, boy. But I think that because Schonbrun had such familiarity with that world, I think, as happens, and I think we talked about this on a previous episode, but this idea that when you know something really well, you start to kind of take certain things as given, and you kind of assume everyone else comes in with that knowledge.
Yeah.
And so again, I watched the film and I found it very disquieting for a lot of reasons, as we'll discuss. But I also just thought, what the fuck do I think of this? And as again, I've watched probably a couple hours worth of, I've actually watched longer than the film, of discussion with the director and other people. And I understand where they're coming from. This idea that the entire film is a performance. The only parts that are not performance are the parts where we see Casey step away from the computer and we see Bald Creepo step away from the computer. But when they enter into the computer, at that point, reality is kind of uncertain. And I think Bald Creepo has the same problem we do, that he's just not sure exactly how much is Casey's, performance. And I was a little, I was confused as to a little bit as to, does Casey actually think something is going to happen? Is she hoping that something will happen to kind of change her life? And I think that's something that happens when young people get into shit like witchcraft. You know, I think they want power, right? They want some kind of change and something that they control, or at least something that they invite in. And so I was a little bit confused as to what Casey actually wanted, because when Creepo started, you know, he told her, you know, this is a game, right? I mean, she reacted with real venom. You know, that tarot card reading she did, where she basically just said, get on your bike, you creep. And, you know, she called him a pedophile, which is really, you know, if you are actually, if he wasn't a creep, and I will say, you know, obviously that's a big if, that is the worst thing that person could call you. Because I mean, you and I talked a little bit about this off air. There was one time where I saw someone who was, you know, in their teens, late teens, who I'd had occasion to meet. They were, you know, flying a little close to the sun. And I kind of thought, you know, should I say something? But ultimately I thought no, because it's not, there's no way I can involve myself in this person's life without raising questions. And thankfully, again, they had parents who were eventually, you know, the parents saw what was going on and they stepped in. But, you know, that is the thing in the back of your mind, you know, you're always worried, like, is this going to be misinterpreted? And if Creepo wasn't actually trying to be creepy, if he was just a sad predator who, you know, is a man past 40 trying to make friends, then that stings, you know, like that hurts. And, you know, I think that's one of the reasons I don't understand guys who go after teenage girls, you know, like, aside from the fact this is gross, but even in, you know, like, so say legal age, like, you're not dealing with a fully formed human. And if you pin any kind of emotional, like, attachment to this person, you're going to have your guts ripped out at some point, because they're going to lash out. And when they do, it's going to hurt.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. And, you know, when you're, you know, I work at a university.
Don't date teenagers, by the way, just to be totally clear. I am 1000% against dating teenagers. I have known men who've done this in the past. They were, you know, in their early 20s at the time. Still, don't do it. The children, leave them the fuck alone.
Yeah. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, there's some sick folks out there, and, as people who are not amongst that group, you know, you want to be extra careful, you know, to not give the impression that you are, right. And so you have to be extra cautious. And, you know, yeah, absolutely. I want to use it to kind of talk a little bit about JLB, because
that's what his name was. Thank you.
Yes. JLB.
I knew they'd given him a name.
Because one of my points is that JLB is like 1000% destined to appear on TV with Chris Henson, right? He'll be one of those guys who's like, no, I was here to help them. I was here, but he's going to be, you know, so like when you look, like, you know, you start with the creepy avatar on Skype and the creepy voice. I mean, that's bad enough, right?
Yes.
But then you get to the scene where, you know, he's sitting on the can watching Casey's video, clearly
with the door open like a serial killer.
Right. So that's problematic. But then it gets worse. Dude is heating up warm milk in the microwave. Okay. And then the coup de grace. He's one of those people who saves everything on his desktop. If you watch when he's saving the videos, it's like save to desktop. I saw that. And to me, there's just nothing screams serial killer more than someone with a crazy, messy desktop. If you're one of those people out there, I apologize. But so like, it just, you know, so this guy, but what I really want to know is, how does creepy milk dude afford such a nice house? Like, who's paying this guy 6 figures, let alone hiring him? Right. I mean, look, do you see this house? I mean, so does being a creep pay that well? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Do you have
not to me,
for me, Bren?
As you can see from my empire of garbage behind me, no, being a creep has not been a lucrative career for me.
Well, having a PhD is only slightly better. So,
oh, good. Well, I was glad you reminded me that you had that, because
yes, well, you know.
I mean, what's crazy is, you know, that place, it's full of crap, but it's not tasteful crap. It's just crap. And I got to say, that house actually reminded me of someone I know. And they just I mean, they kind of came into it through inheritance, and they worked a lot back in the day when, you know, working a middle class job got you enough money you could actually put shit in the bank.
Yeah.
Like there was a bit here, like see the bags. I thought it was kind of interesting that the only time we ever see someone in JLB's life is a woman in the distance carrying shopping bags.
Right.
And, you know, none of their furniture looks comfortable. None of it looks like it was sat in. Pocket doors in a nice house. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
These two can be yours, Jonathan, for the price of being a weirdo on the internet. Nope, I'm not going to finish that sentence.
No.
But yeah, and I think it's not like the idea that he makes the money. I mean, I don't know how the fuck anyone down there makes real money in America, but I think it's more that, you know, people like that. I mean, there's 1,000 ways you could have the money, but it hasn't done anything to make him happier.
Mm-hmm.
He's still a miserable, creepy, middle-aged guy, and who's again sharing a house with someone who he never sees or speaks to, and seems to just buy shit. You know, I don't think it's an accident. The only time we saw them was with a bunch of shopping bags.
Yeah. No, there's some disconnect there, and that, you know, I mean, and having it disconnect was probably a good creative choice. It kind of helps kind of hit this note that you're talking about, you know, him being, you know, completely lonely, yet still at least there's someone in his life apparently who is still, you know, so uninvolved in his life that he can spend all these hours at a computer doing who knows what. That's
the weird thing. There's this thing that I always see in American shit, and it blows my mind, and it's always sort of with like middle class type people, maybe like upper middle class, but they don't come home after work. They go to I went to the bar, or after they eat dinner, and then the partner will sit down and watch television, and then we'll be like, oh, I'm going to the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And that just seems to be a regular thing that happens. And it's like you share the same house, but you never actually have fucking conversations or spend time together. And that seems so weird to me. But, you know, in light of that, I guess it's not impossible that you've got two people living in this giant house who just occupy the same space, but never actually speak.
Well, if two people need a house that big, I mean, they probably spend time on opposite sides of the house. I mean, that's a really, I'm in a family of 4 and our house isn't that big, you know. So,
well, PhD money isn't rolling in yet.
It's, not yet. I'm hoping those big sweet YouTube checks will come in and,
no one tell him. No one tell him. I better not say that. I'll tell you later. Better not say that on camera. I mean, I know a woman who used to clean houses here in Victoria. She cleaned a house up on sort of in the nicer part of town. I want to say it was 10 bed, 12 bath. 2 people live there part of the time.
Wow.
And what do you even do? I mean, unless you're playing hide and seek with Nerf guns, or you've got weird fuck stuff going on. Are you talking about Citizen Kane? Well, I mean, so sort of. If Citizen Kane was a creepy bald pervert and Rosebud was a teenage girl on the internet.
So even in my house, 3 people, including me, some days I'll go without talking to anyone at all.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, maybe I'm just needy and weird. Well, okay, I know that, but
well, I mean, that's a given, but
you fucker.
Points, Joseph.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's endless points. That's Garanga right there. You can run over those monks till the end of time. That's a Grand Theft Auto joke. That's not an incitement to violence.
We were looking at a 4-bedroom houses, not knowing what we would do with them all.
Yeah, man. Nick and I have talked about that. We've got a 2-bedroom apartment, and that's enough room. I mean, one more room for Nick's, her arts shit would be good. But even that, we've got a place. We got rid of the dining room table because whoever sits there, and she's got like an art area set up there. But we were talking about having a bigger place. What the fuck do you put in it? I mean, I once lived in a 5-bedroom apartment. And, back in the day when shit like that was cheap, and I had a room where people could pass out after parties. That's too many rooms. You don't need a room specifically for that. That is stupid.
Fair.
Since we're dunking on Bren,
yes.
I thought, and I apologize if anyone's picking up the burps. This mummy piss is just Oh God, it's horrible.
Oh, well, here's
Art
art
shit.
in the room.
Yeah, Ella. Well, there's a lot of it, but it's. I don't want to demean it because I'm very supportive of Nick's art. He's very talented. Is there another reason to have such a large house other than Nerf? No, not at all. Well, I mean, fuck stuff, I guess. But anyways, ancient Romans needed that room. I once stayed at an Airbnb. I actually call it the Roman whorehouse in the woods.
Okay.
Because it was huge, and I am certain that the previous owners used it for fuck stuff. And I know this. I know this as much as I know anything, because at one point, or not at one point, the ensuite bathroom for the master bedroom, the walls do not go all the way to the ceiling. So if you got to go tinkle in the soft darkness of 3 a.m., the whole house is going to hear it. So I assume if you're peeing on someone else, the whole house can hear it, and that's the point of the entire enterprise. But anyways, that was fascinating Airbnb experience. The kitchen table is octagonal and heavily reinforced, which again makes me think someone's dancing on it.
Yes.
Or multiple someones. I don't know, Joseph. The world is very complicated, and I am too ugly to get invited to sex parties.
That's true. So what's your next?
you magnificent bastard. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
And that actually probably brings me to that's a great segue. We'll say it was intentional. To my sort of really the biggest point for me, which is that I found the film crushingly lonely, like crushingly lonely. And Sean Byrne has said that some of this comes from their experience of transition, because they were born a biological male, and they've since transitioned into female. And so they've said that this kind of comes from part of that comes from their transition. And there's a great little quote I want to read from the critic Drew Gregory. And Drew says, while the film isn't explicitly about transness, much of the film feels like an expression of dysphoria and a uniquely trans loneliness. Casey's decision to enter a challenge that promises to transform her, Casey's decision to enter a challenge that promises to transform her feels trans. The wrongness Casey begins to feel during the game, and that she admits to having felt before the game, feels trans. The way it plays with body horror and identity and reinvention feels trans. And sitting behind a computer screen as a depressed teen, wondering if you should make up another story or just kill yourself, unfortunately, also feels trans. And now, I've never experienced gender dysphoria, but I am a very lonely person, and this is one of the best on-screen depictions of loneliness I've seen. Like, this is like a digital Edward Hopper painting. Okay. It's just, again, when I watched Casey, because her being on screen, that's all performance, right? But when I watched her go into that garage and put on that ASMR video, and just having someone, a total stranger, put you to sleep and kind of like tell you affirming things. I mean, it works, and if it helps, great. Like, I fall asleep most nights to Rain videos on YouTube, so I get it. But just that a teenager, like, I'm a grown ass man who's made choices in my life to end up here. I'm a disagreeable motherfucker, Joseph. So fine, but that a teenage girl would have to live that life makes me very sad. That that they have no one to go to, and like I said in the trailer, I just wanted to say, come here, kid, let's get you to a therapist. Yeah.
No, that when I when you brought that point up, and I think about my sons who again are younger than Casey's character, but I think about if one of my sons woke up like that and was just that lonely and depressed, it makes me sad to think that they wouldn't come to me and say, "Hey, Daddy, can you sit with me for a little bit?" Right? And and that we could have a moment where I could sit with them and just listen and talk, and and that I could that they would need to go to an ASMR video in a 12-minute shot away down, after looking at guns, so the idea that there wasn't another presence in her life other than a video, right? That was definitely, as a parent, that hits a nerve.
Yeah. And you and I were talking about this beforehand. You actually felt that it bothered me more.
Yeah.
Her situation than it did you, which I thought was fascinating, because again, I don't have kids, and you suggested that may be part of the reason.
Yeah, that's, and I'm glad you kind of brought that up, because we were talking about that before. Like, definitely some of those elements of this film moved me. I wasn't unmoved by them. It was, sad, but what I think it is as a parent, I'm used to worrying about my kids.
Right.
Already, it's already baked into my existence, right? Whereas for you, this was causing you to feel things you didn't normally feel, like empathy. And,
Man, you got these
I'm
locked and loaded tonight.
I'm telling you. So I think for you, it was this new experience of being human that for me, it was what is already kind of a daily thing. All joking aside, though, I think I'm used to having that fear already, and for you, you're not used to experiencing that.
I mean, yeah, like I the closest I've come to this, I've got a niece. She's 13 now, and is she 13? She's turning 13 this year, and I'm just not very close, and it's not for lack of wanting to be. It's just it's like geographically, I am a distance away, and so yeah, I don't have much of an experience with that, and I tend to be. This is something actually, and this is maybe a little more introspective than we want to get on weird together, but I'm a very strong person. Like in terms, like physically, I'm very strong, and sometimes I don't know my own strength, and so I can sometimes be a little bit too. I will like be very gentle with things, like a little bit like Lenny, like the little man. I will hug him and squeeze him and call him George.
Right.
I'll be very cautious, and so I sometimes think people and things are more fragile than they are. So when I see someone going through that, I like I sort of maybe overcompensate for the empathy. I sort of like see it as like more serious than it is. I don't know. It's that could have something to do with it, but it bummed me out. And again, as someone who has been, in past very lonely, like there were stretches of my youth where I just didn't really have many friends. Shock. Yeah, that very much resonated with me, and I think that's why I sat with it so long afterwards. It just in those, like being the person. Even now, I mean, I'm always up at night. Most of the people I know are not, so I'm kind of used to moving through those spaces in that way. And it doesn't affect me quite the same way as it used to. But seeing someone else kind of living through that was very affecting for me.
Yeah. You mentioned how a depiction of loneliness, and I was thinking about this. How do you feel, or have you seen the Bo Burnham Inside, that special that he did? How do you feel that? I mean, I know people have the different opinions about Bo Burnham, but I thought that was one of the better depictions of kind of loneliness that I had seen. It was very much obviously framed and nested within the pandemic, which makes it a little bit different. How what are your thoughts on that?
I haven't actually seen it.
Okay.
I sort of was first made aware of it as kind of a stand-up comedy thing, and I don't generally watch a lot of stand-up comedy, so I didn't watch it. But funny enough, Sean Brun and Jane, if I doubt you'd ever watch this, but if you are and I'm fucking up your name, I apologize. But they programmed a series of films recently, or maybe not recently, in the last year somewhere, and I believe one of the like the Videodrome was one of them. They were all kind of about our relationship to the internet and technology and things like this. And so, yeah, Videodrome was one of them. And I believe Inside was one of them as well. So I think this was very much on their mind as they made the film.
Burnham has a little bit of a reputation for being some of his older humor being a little problematic. I would highly, as someone who enjoys good filmmaking and skill and talent, I think you would really enjoy it, because he films it all himself, by himself, in one room. And when you see what he accomplishes by himself, it's impressive, but it also hits on these themes of loneliness in ways that I think is quite profound. So I would definitely encourage giving it a watch. Rebecca comments that I feel that, especially after being through some dark times myself, I probably worry about people more than I probably should in some situations. So
yeah, I understand Rebecca completely.
Yeah. So
So we have empathy, and you are a soulless prick. So yeah, continue. Now that we've established that.
I'm not sure how many points where we are on the Talk to Gun. I got 2 points left. Where are you at?
I more or less have hit pretty much everything I felt
Right.
was really important. I've maybe got one more we could talk about, but only if we have time. Please
Let's.
continue.
I'm gonna hit a quick one, and then I got kind of my closer, so we'll go back and forth. All right. Speaking of feeling and how it made you feel, and this is a quick point, but I thought the soundtrack was outstanding in terms of the styles of music. Really placed the film in its time. It
Yes.
took me back. What is it's what about 10, 15 years is past is when it's roughly supposed to be at. Did you get a sense of?
I actually don't know. I don't think it ever came up in the conversation.
Yeah.
I
It
sort of
feels
took
like
it
it's
as
not today though. You know.
maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the technology it was all shot on modern technology. I mean, it was shot on
Yeah.
prosumer. Pardon me. Some of the stuff was shot with prosumer equipment. I don't know if all of it was.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. I can't say.
It feels like the film is supposed to be set maybe 10 years ago ish. And maybe, yeah,
Okay.
and maybe I'm wrong, but the music definitely to me, it felt like the music of that era, at least for me.
Interesting. I believe the composer is Alex
Okay.
Gianniscoli is the name of the composer. And as I recall, he started his career with DIY releases on Bandcamp.
Okay.
So I think he performs as Alex G. So if anyone wants to see more of his stuff, the soundtrack is on YouTube. You can, I believe, legally stream the soundtrack on YouTube, which I imagine means it's on other streaming services as well. But the music is very, very good. And I think in the best way it underscores what's happening. It doesn't it doesn't overpower it. And doesn't tell you what to feel, which is important because obviously a lot of times scores overcorrect on that.
So you had one more, right?
Yes. And it's really just a quote that, again, I got from the director because I struggled with the ambiguity of the ending. You know, this idea of because obviously the last we see of Casey is the video of the World's Fair video of the sort of lights on her face. And she says, one day maybe I'll just fade away forever, which is sort of, which JLB takes to mean self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we kind of go through the screen into his world. And he is telling the story of his final meeting with Casey, where he so allegedly met her in person. And it just kind of ends. And he tells a story. And I mean, to me, none of it felt like, I think that was my first indication that some of this is like this is meant to be performance. He's performing because the likelihood of them having this meetup very slim. Mm-hmm. Considering the way they left things. And so that was sort of my first thought was like, okay, so this is all kind of meant to be performance. Him talking to the camera, that's him creating a YouTube video where he's kind of furthering his own mythos. And so then I found this quote and I really kind of, again, it helped me contextualize the ending. Everyone is an unreliable narrator because they're performing, and that's what we do on the internet. And honestly, that's what we do in our lives. Another core idea of the internet is that it doesn't work like a movie. There's no narrative catharsis. There's no 3-act structure. Sometimes people disappear, and you never know if they're still alive or if they just deleted their account, they got bored, where they are in life. And that reminded me, there's a movie called Sleigh Bells, which I don't think we'll ever do on this show, but it is a horror film about a group of YouTubers, women, who break into Santa's village outside of LA, and it turns out that Santa is there, and they're being attacked by evil monsters who want to destroy Christmas. Very silly movie. It's fun, but it's very silly. And one of the actresses in the film was, in fact, a fairly popular YouTuber who just disappeared one day, and quite literally is gone. Has just disappeared. The director was saying in an interview, he tried to find her to give her some residuals, couldn't find her. She's just disappeared. Her channel was deleted, and she is gone. And he's heard she got a family. Rebecca says, now I want to see it. Seems like it's a lot deeper than it is on the surface. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. All the world's a stage, and we are merely players. Indeed.
Yeah.
After drinking all this, I'm going to be full of both sound and theory. And it'll be signifying that I wasted my money on this soda. But it was interesting because this was someone who had a pretty substantial following, from what I understand, and then one day just gone. And again, it's rumored that she started a family somewhere in the Midwest, but wherever she is, she's not on the internet, and no one who knew her in her past life can find her now.
Interesting. So I want to touch on the ending as well. That was kind of my last point as well. So the ending is sort of, it starts out actually with him outside and then
his mansion,
right outside his McMansion,
his pervert cave.
Yeah, and then it ends with sort of this kind of, I don't know, exposition dump monologue, right? And and that for me that was initially very unsatisfying. It felt like, I don't know, like they didn't have a better idea for an ending, and and it's a lot cheaper to shoot than actually going to having them meet in New York City.
Right.
But as I thought about it more, it reminded me of an ending for another film series called The Leftovers. And I talked to you about this. You haven't seen this, and anyone who's had may remember it, but I won't go into all the details. And I'll try to be too spoiler heavy here. But Nora, the character here, is talking to Kevin Garvey, the character.
Oh, is that Carrie Coons?
Yes.
I have such a crush on that woman. Oh, molto
bene. So well, then
Incredible.
You should see this show. It's worth seeing. And she's fantastic in the series, and
she's good in everything.
Yeah, it is and it's Justin Theroux is plays Kevin Garvey, and these two are sitting, having dinner or having a meal, I should say, talking. And I won't give away all the details. But the ending of this series that had plenty of budget to do what they wanted to do, but she is giving a similar exposition, talking about something she experienced, right? She's telling you where she went and what she saw. And it's this very moving, concluding kind of bit of the film that ties a lot of things together of the series. And they easily could have, well, I shouldn't say easily, but they had the means where they could have filmed what she is describing. Right. And it seemed odd at first that they weren't. But I think there's been plenty talked about with The Leftovers, the ending. And I think, though, that part of the reason that they used that method is probably similar to why they'd use in this film, or at least was part of the reason, is because they wanted you to be left with this question. Well, is that really what happened? Right? Yeah. Did he really meet with her? And in The Leftovers, Carrie Coons' character, Nora Durst, I think they want you to wonder, did she really end up where she said she went? And did she really see what she saw? So anyone who's seen The Leftovers, I think, would probably see that comparison. So I wonder if the writer director of this film was influenced by that at all in that regard.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think, it could. I don't know. It didn't come up in any of the material I saw, but that doesn't mean anything. Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's certainly understanding what they meant the film to be. Mm-hmm. The JLB's ending, where he's in a way continuing the story, he's continuing the role play. It sort of seems like that it's meant to sort of play more to that ambiguity than it is anything else. But yeah, I now that I understand it, I like it. As I said, we've discussed before the difficulty inherent in saying, well, I understood it after I spent 2 hours researching it.
Right.
But
yeah.
All right. So that is my final Talk to Gun point. How about you, Joseph?
I've hit them all. We've managed to get out of the Talk to Gun alive, both of us.
By the grace of God.
What you think?
All right. Because I don't have a good transition sting yet, I just thought, well, let's go with the uncomfortably horny. The uncomfortably horny sting that is already there. And would you recommend We Are All Going to the World's Fair?
I would recommend it to someone who wants to watch and enjoys something that's a little more nuanced and wants to appreciate the art form. If for a mass audience who wants something that is, has a solid narrative and they're going to finish the film and feel closure and feel like they know what they just watched. For that type of audience, I would not recommend it.
Yes. And I just want to say for our folks watching, we're going to start winding it down now. So any last questions, comments, pop them in the comment section there, and we will review them as we start heading out. And as for me, I feel the same way. I think it was a really lovely, difficult, personal, like human drama. Almost like a coming of age drama with horror movie trappings. I would not recommend this to most of the horror fans I know, because it's not a horror movie. Not really. And I think that people going into it with certain expectations, with standard horror movie expectations, would come away disappointed. I don't think that's the film's fault. I think that's just the baggage you go in with, right? So I would recommend it, but with the caveats Joseph put in place, as well as my own. If you're expecting a horror movie, don't, because you're going to be pissed off.
There were a lot of nice elements. It reminds me of a song that has a lot of great musicianship and a lot of great chops and a lot of great parts, but no hooks. It's missing hook, right? The hooks that a mass audience is going to like, but something that's kind of progressive that maybe more patient listeners will enjoy.
It's a Mars Volta album. There we go.
There you go.
All right. If you want to watch We're All Going to the World's Fair, there's some places you can stream it. We're going to put this up on our YouTube channel after the show is over. And as always, we want to encourage you, please, please, please pay for it if you want to see it. Do not pirate independent film. I mean, I would prefer you didn't pirate any films, but if you're going to pirate Endgame, well, I won't cast an eye your direction. But shit like this gets made or doesn't get made on the basis of the votes, and votes are your rents, your purchases. So vote with your dollars. If you want to watch the movie, please, please, please pay for it. It's $5. It's worth your time. And I guess that's it. Any final thoughts before I put up the next show's movie?
No, I think we've hit on quite a bit here, and I think I've hit my quota of insulting you. So
yeah, we're going to go this time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for me too. So next time around, it's going to be 2 weeks from today. We're going to be talking about. I've seen this one. I really quite like it. It's a lot of fun. I wanted something light after the soul crushing heaviness that was We're All Going to the World's Fair. It is 15 Things You Didn't Know About Bigfoot. Number 1 will blow your mind. Yes, it's a real movie. It is good. And you will find that streaming most places. And again, otherwise you can rent it. And we'll post some links up in places you can find it a few days in advance of the next show. Again, that'll be Tuesday, June. What is that? Today is the 24th. So Tuesday, June 7th will be our next show. Thanks to everyone who joined us. Thanks to everyone who participated in the chat. This is a lot of fun. I really love doing this. You guys are always great. It's a treat. And so until next time, we're weird.
And you're weird.
So why not be weird together? We'll see you next time.